All right. Hello. Welcome to our podcast, our first podcast. My name is Ross Hightower,
And I'm Deb Heim,
and our podcast is called,
Quizzical Spirit.
huh, okay. So this is our fourth or fifth attempt, be through various technical issues and other issues. Now we're trying again. Um, so we are writers of high fantasy novels. This is my first novel, Spirit Sight. And we love writing the books. Some of the books we write together, some of them I write by myself. This is one that we wrote together, right? So there's the Spirit Song trilogy, which I write by myself, and then there are a set of prequels that start about 10 years before the trilogy that we write together. And we love writing the books, but we hate the marketing. And the one thing that we like about marketing is doing the interviews on other people's podcasts. So we
Correct.
decided, why don't we try doing a podcast? So
Because
what
what
are we going to do
what
in
is
this podcast?
what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, right. No one's going to die. So what are we going to do in this podcast, Deb?
Well, basically what we're going to do, there's a couple of things. First, we're going to talk about yeah, that's actually, we already covered why. We like this. This is fun. So that's why. That's the only reason why we like it. The how is we're going to be doing podcasts maybe every week, every other week, and it's going to be 10 to 15 minutes. It's going to be something that we find interesting. That's it. Just something that is interesting to us. We're going to kind of keep it short. So, like, you can listen to it while walking on the treadmill or whatever. Um, and in terms of the scope, we're going to start with what we do with our writing and what our process. But ultimately, I would dearly love for us to interview other creatives because we're trying to create, with everything we do, we're trying to create a creative space for not just ourselves, but other people. One of the few things about the social media and the marketing that we found is you have to find community. One way or another, you have to find community, whether it is we all like the same books or we're interested in the same stuff. And that we're here for the humping of your book, like, and the algorithms and the all the bit, we're just not there for that. It sucks the joy out of the writing process. So we're going to try to develop a community that brings joy to us.
Right. So I started writing something like 4.5 years ago, and I can never explain why. I have always, since I was a kid, wrote stories, told myself stories at night, um, and I still do that. And one night, about 4.5 years ago, I was trying to imagine creating a magic system for fantasy novel because I read a lot of fantasy novels, and I'm thinking, how do these authors do this? There's so many fantasy novels created. So one morning I woke up, I had this story in my head that I told myself the night before, and I went to a coffee shop and I started writing. Yeah, I knew that I was going to write after that. So I started writing scenes. I didn't even really think about the novel. And eventually I started kind of coalescing it around a plot for a novel. And the way that Deb and I kind of started working together was I would write something and be really excited about it. And I would ask Deb to read it. And we had sort of a mismatch in our expectations
Yeah,
about
I
what.
was my training, I mean, I'm a nurse, I'm a nutritionist, I have like way more degrees than any one human being needs to have. But my initial degree was in English literature from William and Mary, and with a minor in Marxist economics, go socialism. And, look at the guy ahead of us up here. Um, I um, I was approaching it as a critique of this word is inappropriate or this word, da 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 da. And that was not what Ross needed as a new author trying to find his voice. He did not need me to nitpick, and I
Mm-mm.
was nitpicking. I
Right. I
wasn't
wanted her.
writing, I was just pulling apart his writing, which was
Right.
useless.
I wanted her to look at the story and
Right.
see if the story was working. Um, and so it was uncomfortable for a while. Um, but then
Years of
we
goodwill as a married couple really
right
helped.
got us through.
and
Yeah,
and getting through like other things that were way harder than this
yeah,
really helped.
right. So eventually we figured it out, and Deb started to understand that uh, I the writing would fix. I could fix the writing. Like if I
Correct.
went through multiple drafts, those little things that she was pointing out, I could iron out, and so that wasn't as much of a concern when she was looking at it. And then we discovered that we loved talking about it. Right? We go to our favorite brewery, the Black Husky Brewery over in River West. Yeah, our favorite beer is Spruce, and we just love. I write, she reads what I write, and we talk about it, and just love it. And then when I was writing my first book, which is Spirit Sight, the trilogy, which is about a peaceful people called the Alaos, which is a Norwegian phrase that means all of us. How they're dominated by an authoritarian imperial power. And I started to wonder, how does this peaceful people start fighting back? And so I started a prequel, which is about 10 years before Spirit Sight, that tells that story. How does this peaceful people learn to start fighting back? And I got about halfway through this book and I got stuck, seriously stuck. And Deb and I I was right and she would read. And then we started talking about, well, what should happen?
It
How do we
shifted.
make this plot work?
Right.
How do the characters work?
Yeah, it shifted from me to being a reactor to a co-collaborator.
Mm-hmm. And that's
And
why on this book it's both of us, right? And so
which I
we
was
decided,
very excited about.
yeah,
But like okay, so here's how it works. He starts writing, and I, as a trained English major, was like talking about themes and concepts and that, and he kept going, but what
right.
about
But what's the plot?
what's the plot?
What actually
So
happens in the book?
what happens. And so what I bring is that broader context of, okay, if so and so is acting like this and they're within this structure and within this, okay, what are the broader concepts that go through and how do we bring those into the story? And I think as a result, I mean, those are in the initial books he wrote, but we're weaving them in more and more in terms of world building that is not just, oh, there's these characters and this and this magic system, but also the political, economic,
Mm-hmm.
social, the whole idea of patriarchy and misogyny and like
Right.
all of those pieces are in there.
Yeah, and those are the kind of things I had to kind of come up with my own in the first book. But now it's sort of we're doing it together, and it's
Yeah,
richer, right? Because we have two different perspectives looking at the same topics, and so
right.
it's a much more in depth kind of world building than it would have
The
been.
other piece that I do is when he's going, like, and this is going to show up in Ostera, which is the next book, which we're not going to talk about today, but there's a piece where he needed somebody to do some recon on how within a medieval structure would you do this thing. And so I did some research on, okay, this is how you would have done this before there was electricity. This is how you would have done this in other things. I mean, he's already done a lot of that, like things like building bows, which was a bit Bowyer's, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, but like there's a lot of pieces of this where he's already done a lot of research on like how would you do this and it's high fantasy, epic fantasy, it's medieval. So how would you do these things? He's already done a lot, but that's the other piece that I bring is, we're both former academics. So the research thing we're pretty cool with. So,
Yeah, we like that part of it.
mhm,
Yeah, and the detail from it.
yes.
So that's how we write together. And
Hmm.
next podcast, we'll talk a little bit about the next few podcasts. The next book that we're developing, we're going to kind of bring you in on some of the discussions that we have about how we develop that book.
Yep. But
So
is
you can find my website at rosshightower.com.
mhm.
Um, you can email me at author@rosshightower.com.
We
Uh,
also have a website. I mean, we have a Facebook presence. It's Quizzical Spirit, and we
a
have a
World of
World of
Argren.
Argren. If you literally put in Facebook World of Argren, we have a Facebook group that talks about stuff that's going on and where we're going to go. We have a lot of things planned, some of which are probably going to end in disaster, and yet we soldier on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but that quizzical spirit, if you do that in Facebook, you'll find us.
Right. Okay. So next time we'll start talking about the next book.
That's it. All right, great. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.